Hello everybody, I am AHMAD BAIHAQI. I'm the English lecturer of postgraduate. Welcome to Spadang Tirta. Today we are going to discuss a topic about translation and ideology. Okay, when we talk about ideology and translation, basically this is the vital part in the discussion of translation because it relates with the what will the translator do with his or her translation text. First of all, before we discuss about the concept of translation and ideology, we have to know that there is no natural activity in translation. It means translation is not a natural activity. So the ideology will refer to the choices of whether the translation text that will be chosen by the translator is correct or not, whether the translation text that will be chosen by the translator is appropriate or not. Therefore, the terms of ideology in translation, it will have a vital part. It will have a significant part in translation study. Okay, the key point of the translation ideology, we have to know that ideology refers to the set of beliefs, set of assumptions, set of value in whether reflected in individual or social community. So when we talk about translation and ideology, it refers to the set of beliefs or set of assumptions that reflect in the translator's tendency. So in the general point, the ideology and translation, it will refer to the translator's tendency when he or she try to translate his text into target language. Okay, the terms of ideology in translation was originally proposed by Lawrence Venuti in 1995 in his book entitled The Translator's Invisibility. So the translator tendency means, as he said in his book, that the translator will face the binary position whether he or she should follow the SL linguistic features or he or she should follow the TL linguistic features. In this case, as he already stated in his book, when the translator tries to follow the SL linguistic features, it means the translator is visible. Why visible? Because the translation text will taste like a result of translation. However, when the translator tendency, he or she try to follow the TL or target linguistic features, it means the translator is invincible. Why invincible? Because the translation text is not taste like the result of translation. So the further discussion of ideology and translation also continued by, for instance, Basil Hattem and Mason, and also discussed by Mona Baker, for instance, but this term was originally proposed by Lawrence Venuti in 1995. Okay, when we talk about ideology and translation, we will face about two concepts. We will face with two theories related to ideology and translation. First, that is ideology translation, and the second one is translation ideology. When we talk about ideology translation, which means in Indonesian language it can be translated into penerjemahan berideologi, it refers to the SL text ideological substances. It will refers to the substance that contained in the SL text. However, when we talk about translation ideology, it refers to the translator's tendency to each translated text. It means, as I already told to you before, it will such kind of dilemma for the translator that he should follow to SL or he should adapt it to TL. Therefore, as originally proposed by Lawrence Venuti in his book Translation Equivalence and also the Translation Ideology, let's say it has a vital or it has a significant role in translation study. And yeah, as already proposed by Lawrence Venuti, he classified the translation ideology into two binary positions. two kinds of ideology. The first one known as foreignization, and the second one known as domestication. Let's say to have further discussion about this, because this is the point of our discussion today. Okay, when we talk about foreignization and domestication, as already taught by Trinity, when the translator tried to or follows the foreignization as his or her ideology, it means the translator is visible. Why visible? Because the SL linguistic and extra linguistic will have dominant features, will have dominant place in his or her translation text. So why when it is said that foreignization ideology make the translator makes the translation or make the translator is visible, because the translation text will have source language, dominant linguistic, and extra linguistic feature. For instance, when we say a simple example in Indonesia, from English into Indonesia, we have Mr. Romeo and Mrs. Juliet. When the translator has foreignization ideology, he or she will translate those terms into Mr. Romeo and Mrs. Juliet. Why? Because all of Indonesian readers already understood what is meant by Mr. Romeo and also Mrs. Juliet. However, when we talk about domestication ideology, so as already said by VDT, the translator is invincible. Why invincible? Because he or she will follow target language dominant linguistic and extra linguistic features. For simple example, as I already told to you, Mr. Romeo and Mrs. Juliet will translate it into Pak Romi or Tuan Romi, or in some cultures in Indonesia, for instance Betawi culture, Pak Rojali, for instance, and Mrs. Juliet, it is translated into Nyonya Yuli, or in Betawi culture into Nya Juleha. Okay, or we have in English John. When the translator as for domestication ideology, John, it can be translated in Indonesia menjadi Yono in Jawa, or Yana in Sunda. Okay, or Jack, for instance, Jack from English translated into foreignization ideology, into domestication ideology, into Joko as the name of our president in Jawa, and Jaka in Sunda. Therefore, why I already told you as in the first or in the early of our discussion, the ideology has a vital part in translation study. Okay, for example, let's say we have automatic teller machine. When it is translated into Anjungan Tunai Mandiri, especially this is the example of domestication ideology. But however, when we translated into automatic teller machine becomes mesin kasir otomatis. This is the example of organization. For example, we have mass rapid transit, or we have short message service. When we try to translate by using organization ideology, short message service should be translated into layanan pesan singkat. However, when the translator has domestication ideology, short message service will be translated into surat menyurat singkat, SMS, surat menyurat singkat from short message service. And there are a lot of examples of how as to explain that ideology as a huge part or vital part in translation study. Okay, why ideology becomes the significant role in translation study? Because it is become the super macro level. It will influence, it will correlate, it will affect the next discussion in translation process. Let's say when we talk about translation ideology of organization, the translator will have source language oriented equivalence as his or her preference or his or her choices in coining the equivalence in translation. And also the translator will have source language emphasized methods when he or she has for organization ideology, and it also relates to the choices of translation procedure, which is the translator will choose translation procedures that belong to source language emphasized procedure. To make it clear, when the translator's ideology is for organization, so he or she will choose source language oriented equivalence. When we talk about source language oriented equivalence, the choices of equivalence in translation will be based on, there are 4 things. The first one is lexical analysis, second one is grammatical analysis, the third one is semantic analysis, and then the last one is stylistic analysis, if the translator has for organization ideology. Next, when we talk about macro level, in this case translation methods, the translator will use source language emphasized methods. According to Peter Mark, there are 4 source language emphasized methods. The first one is we have word-for-word translation method. Second, we have literal translation methods. The third one we have faithful translation method, and then the last one we have semantic translation method. And then the last one in the micro level, when the translator use SL or source language emphasized procedure, he or she will use what already discussed by Zhang, Fina, and Zhang Demine into direct translation procedure. We have borrowing, a loan word. Second one we have calc, and then the third one we have literal. So why ideology has a vital part in translation study? Because it influences the rest discussion of the translation. On the other side, when we talk about domestication as the translator ideology, it will also influence the next super macro level. For instance, if for organization will make the translator use SL-oriented equivalence, so the domestication ideology will influence the translator to use target language-oriented equivalence. These types of equivalence is not only the linguistic features, but also the extra linguistic feature. For instance, we have context of utterance, context of situation, and also context of culture. Furthermore, we have time and aspect, and also setting. That's the element that will influence the target language-oriented equivalence. In the macro level, about translation methods, if for organization ideology will influence the translator to use SL emphasized methods. On the domestication ideology, it will influence the translator to use target language emphasized methods. According to Peter Mark, it has adaptation, the first one. Second one, we have free translation method. The third one we have idiomatic translation method, and then the last one we have communicative translation methods. And then the last one. In the micro level, in domestication translation ideology, it will refers to oblique translation as already discussed by Zhang, Fina, and Demine. Okay, class, everybody. Thanks. This is the end of our discussion. Thank you, and hopefully what we have discussed today give us a further understanding, further enlightenment when we talk about translation study. Thank you. See you next. Bye bye.